Let's continue with the other activities which you can provide your students so that they will be able to develop their speaking skills. The next one is by conversations. One of the more recent trends in oral skills pedagogy is the emphasis on having students analyze and evaluate the language that they are or others produce. So they will be in this particular activity, they will be able to evaluate, they will be able to discover how they really speak, the errors which they commit when they are speaking, and also how others deliver or produce speeches. In other words, it is not adequate to have students produce lots of language. They must become more metalinguistically aware of the many features of language, metalinguistically aware, in order to become competent speakers and interlocutors of English. So, in this in doing so, in evaluating how they speak, they would be able to somehow notice the errors which they commit and later on refrain from committing the same mistakes. One speaking activity which is particularly suited to this kind of analysis is conversation. How do you do conversation? The most fundamental form of oral communication, almost still all ESL or EFL students can benefit from a unit on and practice with informal conversation. So in this particular activity, you ask the students to come up with informal conversation, but you students report having either the opportunity or the confidence to engage in unplanned conversation. But sometimes our students are somehow not that confident. They lack the confidence to engage in unplanned conversations, especially with native speakers. A conversation assignment can be helpful in this regard. One way to approach this activity is to assign students to find a native speaker. You ask the students to look for native speakers or near native speakers if there are no native, if there is or a near native speaker. So you look for near native speakers, speakers who are fluent in terms of using the language, using the English language, could also do well. Okay, they know a friend, they know maybe a friend, maybe a roommate or a colleague, and arrange to tape record 20 to 30-minute interaction with this person. So they will record the conversation. The next step is for students to transcribe a portion of their interaction. They will be asked, you should ask them to transcribe a certain part of the discussion of the conversation. Transcription involves a faithful reproduction of what was said on the tape onto the paper. They will write the things that they said on the paper. Can provide a genuine awareness of what speech is really like. One can see speech the way one can see writing. So students would be able to see. And students may be surprised to discover that native speaker speech is far from perfect. Another activity which you can use to develop the speaking skills of the students is by audio taped oral dialogue journals. So audio taped oral dialogue journals. So the activities discussed so far have emphasized fluency and meaning. So fluency and meaning, negotiation rather than accuracy. So we did not focus on the accuracy using the previous activities which we discussed a while ago. On one activity that lends itself well to both concerns is the oral dialogue journal. Like written journals, which are used extensively in writing classes. In writing classes, we ask the students to come up with written journals. The oral dialogue journal has much to offer both the teacher and the students in the oral skills class. So we can use it. So instead of writing, we can ask our students to record their experiences. Oral dialogue journals are one form at where practice with fluency and attention to accuracy can be accomplished at the same time. So ordinarily, the student gives an audio cassette tape to the teacher. So Nowadays, with phones, with mobile phones readily available, uh, almost all our students have available phones which they can use to record. Who starts the oral journal on the tape by giving some directions for the assignment and perhaps suggesting a topic. Teachers can suggest topics such as tell me about your first day in the United States, or tell me about your first day in the class or in a certain place in the country. Be sure to remind students to speak extemporaneously, so they don't have to write whatever it is that they would be delivering. So they would just express themselves so freely, so extemporaneously, and explain why. Some students will want to write their entries and read them, or turn the tape recorder on and off so that they can sound perfect. Remind them that the purpose of the activity is to work on unplanned speaking. So they don't have to be perfect. So you want to be able to identify their errors, their lapses in terms of speaking. Also give them some guidance as to the expected length of their responses. So how long would that speaking, would that recording be? Is that Are you giving them 2 minutes to express themselves, to express their ideas, or what? It's up to you as a teacher. The tape is then returned, or the recording is then returned to the student, who reacts to the teacher prompt and then returns the tape to the teacher, who can respond in various ways. It is always nice to make some comments about the content of the response to reinforce that what is said is as important as how it is said. So you can provide comments. Teachers can provide feedbacks to how the students delivered their responses. Nevertheless, these audio tapes are an excellent resource for the teacher to provide individual feedback. As I mentioned a while ago, can provide individual feedback and instruction on pronunciation or grammar problems. You can tell them the issues. You can tell them the issues which issues on their pronunciation and grammar, since the student has a recording of speech to which he or she can refer. So you can pinpoint, you can identify the particular lines which the students somehow did some errors. So other accuracy-based activities. Let's talk about other accuracy-based activities. Still, other classroom activities can be used for accuracy practice. In the past, speaking activities that focused on accuracy invariably involved drills, which have, for the most part, fallen out of favor in language teaching. Brown recommends that if drills are to be used, they should be short, simple, and snappy. Let's take note of that. That when we would want our students to perform drills, they should be short, simple, and snappy. They should be used sparingly, and they should lead to more authentic communication activities. Remember that the activities should be authentic. In the activities described below, a drill using the particular structure may prove useful as a first step towards more communicative. Let's take a look at some examples. Activities that promote students getting acquainted with each other lend themselves to practice with specific structures but in a realistic context. For example, Wong recommends an activity called 2-minute conversations. If I were blah blah blah, if I were blank, in which students become acquainted with each other by taking on the identity of various foods, animals, buildings, etc. using the structure if I were. So you can make use of that particular structure, okay? And then they can record or they can deliver that in front of the class. More advanced students would be expected to produce more than just the structure. Lower level students would probably benefit from some pre-teaching of the vocabulary, and all students. So it depends upon the level of your students. Sometimes you can still provide lessons on vocabulary if they are not yet available, especially for EFL learners. And all students could benefit from some instruction on the present and real conditional. Another early course activity is a structured interview. So, in which students talk to their classmates using an interview form. So there's an interview form. There are particular questions which requires the use of WH and or yes or no questions. A variation in this is an activity in which students need to find someone who and must find at least one other classmate who can answer yes to the question. Do you blank? The first student to find someone who can answer each question wins again. So it's a game. It's a game which you can use in your class. So it's fun, but at the same time, you develop the oral, the speaking skills of your students. Before closing this section, a word about error correction is in order. In the meaning-centered activities discussed here, explicit error correction will probably out of place because it disrupts the communication that is going on. Teachers may note errors that occur at these times for later instruction to the class. Do not interrupt the communication, but just note the errors. As teachers, we can just note the errors which our students commit as a whole or to individual students as necessary during accuracy-based activities. The basic decision to be made is whether to treat any actual error or to ignore it. So it depends on you whether you ignore or whether you treat. But it's very important that for me that you treat, but then it should be in a constructive manner, which will depend on several factors, including the error being made and the context in which it occurs. So it also depends on the error which your students committed. In the unreal conditional activity above, it may be instructive, if not necessary, to correct errors in the conditional form, but not errors in subject-verb agreement. Some teachers choose to correct only those errors which impede communication, such as an incorrect word order. So it depends on you what to correct and ignore less serious errors. So it's up to you as teachers. Teachers must determine, perhaps in consultation with their students, how these errors should be corrected. So there could also be consultation to students wherein the inputs are coming from the students, how those errors could be corrected. That's it. Thank you guys for watching and happy learning. Bye bye.